We got a crazy story that you guys may have heard. This is getting picked up. I believe the story came out yesterday. It's about a man named Christopher Paul Hassan, who wrote that he was dreaming of a way to kill. Well, he wanted to harm many people. Apparently, they found a stash of weapons. I guess law enforcement did their job and they stopped this guy, which is a good thing. So this is from the Independent. White nationalist Coast Guard officer accused of plotting mass terror attack against top Democrats and journalists. And it should be absolutely clear in no uncertain terms that we should all be advocating for peace and respect, not psychotic manifesto weapon stockpiling. You know, how often do stories like this happen? It's relatively rare. And we have to make sure that when they do happen, for one, grateful to law enforcement for stopping this guy. Two, it's kind of scary. The dude worked in, well, he was a Coast Guard, so it's not necessarily law enforcement, but I believe the Coast Guard is a branch of the armed force of the U.S. That's pretty scary, but he was stopped, so this is a good thing. It's good news. Let's read about this guy, and then we've got some tweets pulled up where he has a list of people that he wanted to cause harm to. So there's a lot of people. There's they're presuming who a lot of these people are, but Pelosi was on the list. The name Pelosi. You had Gillibrand, Poca Warren, and Cortez, and they're assuming that's Kirsten Gillibrand, Schumer, Ocasio-Cortez. So let's read this. A Coast Guard officer and self-identifying white supremacist who was accused of plotting to kill top Democrats and journalists was stockpiling weapons, court papers have revealed. Christopher Paul Hassan worked at the Coast Guard's headquarters in Washington and had allegedly expressed extremist views for several years. And what's particularly scary about this is the dude lived in Silver Spring, Maryland. That's my understanding of the story. Silver Spring is essentially Washington, D.C. It's like 5 miles north, maybe. So it's with no traffic. You get a lot of traffic on, 16th? With no traffic, it could be like a 15-minute drive straight into D.C. So this dude was close. And apparently he was looking up places he could try and find some of these politicians. The weirdest and possibly most alarming bit is the dude was stockpiling drugs and steroids so he could carry out a mass shooting. Look, I don't think any sane, reasonable person in this country would appreciate any kind of this psychotic rhetoric or anything from a mass shooter. And so there was a video I watched recently with Ben Shapiro, and someone asked him, this student asked him about, why is it that you're so concerned about babies' lives with pro-life, but you're not concerned about the students' lives when these shootings happen? And Ben immediately fires back. He was like, the reason he wants gun rights is to stop that crazy person from hurting kids, to stop bad guys, not to hurt the kids, right? So there's a stark difference. The reason I bring that up is people, often try and conflate that somehow people on the right would support something like this, and that's just insane. Will they call it out? Hopefully so. But I will say that tribalism creates blind spots. I wouldn't be surprised to see, and also I'll say this too. This story's breaking while we got Jussie Smollett news. His bond hearing, I believe, is at 1:30 p.m., which is about a half an hour from the time when this video goes up. So you're probably going to see all the people on the right screaming about Jussie, and you're going to see all the people on the left screaming about this. I'm going to be doing a video about the Jussie Smollett update, because in my opinion, it's extremely culturally relevant. But admittedly, I kind of get more views on this channel, so I wanted to make sure I could still hit both stories. I can't really, it was a toss-up. Like, we're going to talk about this insane white nationalist dude and his hit list, or are we going to talk about Jussie Smollett? Well, Smollett is kind of dominating cable news coverage, and people are tracking this. So I wanted to make sure that I absolutely did cover this, and presumably, it's probably going to get more views on this channel anyway. But what can I do? I can only cover so many stories. They say, court papers detailed a June 2017 draft email in which Mr. Hassan wrote that he was dreaming of a way to kill almost every last person on Earth. That doesn't sound like white nationalism. That sounds like doomsday genocide. And pondering how he might be able to acquire anthrax and toxins to create botulism or deadly influenza. In the same email, he described an interesting idea that included biological attacks followed by an attack on food supply, as well as a bombing and sniper attacks, according to court documents filed by prosecutors. When authorities searched Mr. Hassan's basement in Maryland, they found 15 weapons, including several rifles and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. I don't know if they have photos here, but we do have a photo. I want to make sure we pull up this photo. This dude was stockpiling. He's getting his guns ready. This dude was insane, okay? You know, there are a lot of stories about crazy people. I don't know how often we hear stories about this level of absolute insanity. But the reason this story needs to be highlighted is that, look, escalation doesn't only occur on the far left. It can also occur on what's typically called the far right. And I want to make sure I clarify, whenever I say left and right, people don't seem to understand the difference. The reason this guy is more associated with far right, it's because we're talking about cultural politics, meaning traditional versus progressive. This guy being associated with white, nationalism doesn't necessarily fit that idea, but it is a mere opposite of the left-wing identitarianism. So I don't know what else we want to call it. We can just call him a white nationalist. The point is, there are fringe wackos across the board. When we're talking about economics, the far right has nothing to do with this. This guy wanting a white ethno-state has nothing to do with right-wing economic policy, which is competition and free market, and left is cooperative and communist, not free market socialist. But I digress. We have to make sure we call out anybody. And another reason I think this guy would fall under more of what you'd colloquially refer to as far right is he's straight up targeting the left, okay? Listen, I have no problem calling out the fringe lunatics on the left for bashing people with bike locks. But one thing that's really important that I think needs to be clarified is the left is really good at street-level harassment and physical violence. Breitbart's got that list of 639 instances. They haven't updated since November. But what I guess the far right, whatever this faction would be, white nationalists, extremists, right, far right terrorists, traditionalists, whatever you want to call them, they're few and far between, but they're much better at what they do, which is terrifying, okay? We have seen reporting, and this is what really bothers me about the narrative of, oh, one side is worse than the other. Yes, there are substantially more instances of the left committing violence, but typically they don't result in death. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they try to kill people, sometimes they don't. But we literally have hundreds of instances of harassment and violence from the left against regular old common folk on the right. But when it comes to the few and far between instances of far-right violence, we've got a couple dozen where they've effectively killed people. And that's what's truly terrifying. Now, I will point something out, too. When it comes to anti-Semitism, when it comes to issues like this, they're immediately painted as right-wing. Here's the thing. Antifa, they literally are economically left and progressive. I don't know if this guy is traditional. I don't know, what his plan is other than he's a white nationalist. In fact, some white nationalists are actually communists. They're socialists. They want a socialist state. I'm not going to get into the whole Nazi socialism thing. That's not what I'm saying. Literally, there are people who are white nationalists who call for universal health care. They just happen to be racist or believe in, a race-based policy. To be fair, though, this guy's targeting the left. We can see we've got, it's really hard to read even for me, so forgive me for it being so small. Chris Hayes, Sen Blumenju, you've got Pelosi, you've got Ari Melber, probably from MSNBC, Schumer, you've got Don Lemon, you've got Gillibrand, you've got Pokawar and Cortez. So yeah, this guy's primarily targeting left-wing individuals, Beto O'Rourke, Harris. So that's why you're probably going to see people refer to him as far right. He's an extremist individual who is targeting the left. I don't know what his political views were other than he was a psychopath who was jacking up on drugs, buying tons of weapons, and wanted to kill people. I am extremely grateful to law enforcement who tracked this guy down and prevented this from happening. And everyone should be too. We should not tolerate this level of sheer psychotic behavior. Now, of course, we're going to start seeing people politicize this. And, here's the thing. Crazy people exist, right? I recognize that when we see, far left individuals go crazy and commit an act of, mass terror, it doesn't represent the entirety of the left. But where I draw the distinction is when you have 700 plus instances and the mainstream media doesn't talk about it, you've got a problem on the left of refusing to talk about it. So it unfortunately does get politicized. I don't think this necessarily should be politicized to the same degree, but I'm actually kind of okay with this becoming a political issue. And I hope this serves as a message to people on the right that, listen, I personally can recognize the right and the left are predominantly normal people who just disagree on basic things. The far left are, typically violent. They show up and they suppress speech. They attack people, and it's encroaching. It's encroaching into mainstream politics. On the right, this kind of thing is few and far between, but let's make sure we don't forget it, that it does exist. Because whenever I come out and I say, listen, these kinds of things, they do exist on the right, people get mad at me and they're like, that's not fair. Listen, let's make sure it's very clear. These kind of instances where you've got this wacko white nationalist targeting the left. People want to disavow. They want to say it's not right wing. Well, he's targeting the left. I don't know what his political views are entirely, what makes him necessarily right wing, but he hates the left. Okay, he's targeting them. He wants to kill them. They're rare. They are. It is true, though, by many metrics, that much of the death caused in terrorism is by white, far right extremism. However, the point I'm trying to make is the right, when they do it, they're successful and psychotic, but rare. The left, when they do it, it's low level, but it happens all the time, and people don't really call it out. Like when those 2 Marines got beaten in Philadelphia by Antifa screaming ethnic slurs, or when Antifa was in Portland screaming racial slurs at police officers. Where's the mainstream narrative? Where's the mainstream media? Now, admittedly, this story isn't getting picked up as much as like Jussie Smollett is. Smollett is going far away because he's a celebrity and it's extremely culturally relevant. But I think this absolutely warrants being talked about. Plain and simple. And I think we should also take the opportunity to point out that almost all people left, right? Normal, not crazy, normal people. But we should always call out the extremists. People often say to me, Tim, you only ever criticize the left. Yeah, because they do this a lot, okay? You got Antifa out there all the time. But I have no problem calling out this fucking psychopath, and neither should any of you. Nobody's perfect. No political faction is perfect. Everyone's got their problems. Let's get rid of the bad, regardless of whose side it's on. Whatever. I'm done with this story. This is ridiculous. But stick around. I'm going to be talking. So the Jussie Smollett story, there's an update at 1:30. So it's another reason why I want to do this, because that's, in a few minutes from when this video launches. And we're going to see what happens. He's going to appear in bond court. We might, I don't know if he'll plead there, or, maybe this could wrap up really quickly, or maybe it could be dragged out. Maybe he'll maintain innocence, but we'll see what happens. But, I'll just say it one more time. Listen, crazy people exist. Don't throw away the good people because the crazy people exist. But still, please, everyone, start calling out your crazies. I see I've seen some people on the right calling this guy out. Thank you. And I've seen people on the left call it the insanity, like Glenn Greenwald's pretty good. Cenk Uygur just defended Tucker Carlson over that whole nonsense story. And that's what we need to see more of. Everybody can calm down. And I'll say this too. Listen, I don't care what your political faction is. Stop these people, right? If it's more on the right, if there's too much on the left, whatever. I don't care about political faction. I care about stopping psychopaths. Plain and simple. I'll see you guys at 4 p.m.